Hello ladies and gentlemen, I am BorderWise, and welcome back to a From the Depths Subscribercraft review. Now today we have a lovely little entry by the channel's, I guess the comment section resident mad German scientist, Rawel. Like, prolific commentator, writes entire essays in the comment section, which are highly appreciated. And this is his ship, the Lancer, which is actually, if you go on his workshop page, link in the description as usual, there's quite the series of craft like this, which all follow like a pretty standard design. It's like, it's a ship, it's got lambs on it, it's got advanced cannons, it's just, they're all pretty similar, they just vary in size and I guess at what stage of the game you're meant to use them. But in any case, the Lancer, and it's a good ship for a start. It is good looking. It actually looks good in my fleet colors, which is always a plus. Like, there's no guarantee when you paint a ship in fleet colors that it'll look good in someone else's. Which is why, it's why when I test craft, I like to spawn them on the side of different factions, just so I get to see a bit of color variety and whether different paint schemes work with different colors. But that's beside the point. So what's good about this thing, apart from it being pretty? Well, the first thing is that it has a very, very good lamb system. I believe Rawel first submitted this to me like in a video where I was moaning about lambs and how complicated they are, and he submitted this and said, hey, this is an experimental little lamb system I did and it seems to work quite well, and it works very well. It's actually the inspiration for the lambs I've now put on the Naga, making it way more expensive, but it's almost immune to missile swarms now, and so is this, as a matter of fact. It's got quite a short range, and it's a continuous laser, so anything within 100 meters, it engages and it pops missiles with quite alarming ease, actually, and I will demonstrate that with my favorite missile spamming nonsense, the Hornet's Nest, assuming we're still in range. And the Hornet's Nest spits out a ridiculous number of missiles, which are quite slow and not very big, so they don't have much health, but you'll see that it's just like, it's like they hit an invisible wall right here. So I'm not sure how many missiles that was, and you'll notice the Hornet's Nest is dead now. More on that later. But, yeah, so it's an extremely good lamb system, and he's remembered to put passive sonar on this thing, so it's also reasonably torpedo-proof. I say reasonably, it's actually quite hard to kill this thing with torpedoes at all. So, it's a very good lamb system. Like, even I, the despiser of lambs, can admit that this is a good lamb system, and if you get this off the workshop, like, I recommend copying it. It's very well done. It is also well armed. You would have seen, by the way, it just took the Hornet's Nest clean out of the sky. It's got good armament on it. It's got these missiles. It's got these missiles right here. Pretty standard. Well, it's standard frag EMP warheads and like maximum cone angle, so each fragment does as much damage as possible. And I've gone back and forth over having like missile frags be 180 or not, because when you have it set up like this, okay, due to the changes made to fragmentation, each fragment does a lot more damage, but it also means that half of them are going the wrong way when they explode. So there's a loss of damage there, but if you've got one frag warhead here, and especially if there's a hole made for the missile and it goes and explodes in that hole, it can be really effective. So yeah, that's absolutely fine. It's got an EMP warhead, so good all-rounder missiles right here. And let's just double check. Yeah, they have target protection guidance, so they can swat aircraft out of the sky. Squirrels are not a problem. Squirrels actually are not nearly as scary as they used to be. Like, I had a long conversation with Rawel about that earlier. And yeah, so that's missiles. It's got torpedoes somewhere. Where are the torpedoes at? It's got... Am I going nuts? This thing has torpedoes. I swear to goodness, it has torpedoes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Where are they at? Oh, here they are. That's... What the... 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, yeah, this is cunning. These are spin block concealed missiles. More of them. And these are more EMP... I didn't even notice these. That's how cunning that is, I guess. Anyway, so there's definite style points right there, but I'm still looking for torpedoes. Because I swear to God, this thing has them somewhere, but I don't know where. I think I actually am going crazy. Yep. Something had torpedoes here, and I'm not sure what it was. No, it's not those. And it's not those. Well, oh no, here they are. Here you go. He's got these, yeah, explosive EMP torpedoes right at the back here. Like, firing straight down, which is interesting. I have noticed that when this thing fights, the torpedoes tend to bounce off the ocean floor. But that's not a huge issue. They get there eventually, and torpedoes aren't really the kind of weapon where you expect them to hit fast. It's more like when they do hit, they hit hard. So yeah, it's got missiles, it's got torpedoes, it's got the big obvious railgun right here, and this is quite a decent gun. It is a Hesh gun, a Hesh railgun, in fact. So you'll note that the muzzle velocity is kind of pathetic unless it has rail draw. So you see railgun settings, railgun speed increased by 37, quite a large accuracy boost, which means this is quite the accurate gun, and also means that, well, it means that it'll pop the ammo compartments on anything without decent shields pretty quickly. So, let's see here, it's a squash head, 0.8 ratio, and also has frag, and again, 180 cone angle, and same thing as before, it's like half the fragments are going the wrong way, but considering how Hesh rounds tend to tear large holes in the hulls, that's not an issue, because the first one makes a hole, second one flies in that hole, and then the frags really do their work. So, quite a good shell design. I like it. And so yeah, that's this gun. It doesn't have an extraordinary rate of fire. It fires 17 rounds per minute, which is like... Although it is quite a big gun, remember, so it's almost 500 millimeters, 475 to be more accurate. So yeah, decent fire rate, especially for a ship that costs this much. This is like 46,000 materials. So this is actually a starter craft. This is something you would build in the early game to take on the Deepwater Guard and the Onyx Watch and that kind of thing. Yeah, the Lambs isn't like fully geared to take out cram volleys. Like in my tests, it does a lot. It does, well, not as well as it potentially could against crams, but again, that's not an issue, because these are missile poppers right here. That's what they're meant for. And moving on to the other gun, this is a Flakgun, little anti-aircraft gun, and quite handy, 190 rounds per minute, solid rate of fire, not game-breaking, thankfully. And if you go here, you'll notice here is a tiny little mistake, easily fixed. It's got a flak warhead, as in the blunt, regular flak warhead, instead of this, the flak head. And that's like, that is, I don't know, that's just a small mistake, easily fixed, but yeah, in case you're wondering, the flak head is better, because if you go flak warhead, look at the muzzle velocity, it drops quite a bit, and so does the kinetic damage and accuracy. So, if we go back here, boop, so that jumps up a little bit better. So, actually, what gauge is this? Desired cell gauge, 99 millimeters. So let's go back in here. I am bouncing back and forth. I apologize for that. So 99 millimeters, and we go flak warhead, 218 meters per second, and flak head is 243, which is actually quite a big difference. It's noticeable when shells are that much faster. Okay, so those are the two guns. We've got main gun, secondary gun right there. We've got these simple weapon lasers right here. Anything gets close, it fries them. Okay, what else is there? And this thing is decently armored for such a... How big is this thing? It's 73 meters long, so it's not tiny, but it's not huge either. So if we go into the armor, it has, on average, around the hull, it has... This doesn't count, by the way, this little weapon controller right here, little bulge. It's got 2 meters of alloy, a layer of metal. Yeah, that's what's below the waterline. It goes to 2 layers of metal right here, next to the gun. And towards here, it gets a little bit thicker. Yeah, wow, around here, around the ammo, that's impressively thick. And I think, yeah, I think the slope... Is this HESH defense? Because I know sloped armor is a thing in this game, so if say a HESH shell hits here, and the spalling happens here, the fragments should be more likely to bounce off the slope right here, except the problem is that in this quite a confined space, there's a lot of other things that'll get taken out regardless, including this volatile Flakgun. So maybe that's not HESH defense, maybe that's for inner aesthetics? Or maybe even just to reduce costs a little bit. I don't know. But in any case, so it's got reasonably good armor. It's certainly not it's not squishy, let's say that. And you might have noticed by the sounds, it has a PID system that well, let's go find the PID system, actually. 1, 2, 3, 4. Shouldn't be hard to find. No. Not there. Here? Once again, I wish there was a search function on this. I know there's gonna... Okay, thought there was 2 mainframes close together. Never mind. Get out of the water so I can look at you. Okay, oh wow, that is a lot of PIDs. So this thing relies heavily on PIDs to stay afloat and to stay stable. So, general purpose air pump altitude mode, so that's controlling the air pumps. Okay, that's shield protection ACBs. Okay, that's the altitude, that's the pitch, that's roll, and that's yaw. So, basically a whole, like, one... Bloody hell, I'm nervous about sticking 1 PID on my stuff, let alone 5. So in other words, this thing is very stable in the water, and you might notice it got dropped into the water. This thing cannot float without those PIDs, which is why it has a lot of propellers on the bottom. They're small propellers, so they use very little power. Like, they use 5 power each, so it's not really that much of a power hog. But, 1, 2, 3, 4... I don't feel like counting all of these, like, feel free to count them. Actually, let's count them. Let's count them. I'm just nerdy enough to do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And 16. And 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24... 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. Did I miss one? Oh, hello! Ahaha, asymmetrical. Wee, you missed one. Or maybe not. Ah, no, I know what there does it. There's a hull pipe right here. Whoop. That's quite cute, actually. Instead of a... that's either very good planning or a very kind of last-minute thing. It's just like, uh-oh, I don't have a place to put the exhaust, so there's a hull pipe. Or it was planned, who knows. So yeah, I lost track. That was 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47. It's got 47 little propellers on the bottom, just to essentially keep it afloat and out of the water and steady, which is amazing, really. And, yeah, so it's not easy to sink unless you blow the engines out or manage to blow all those little propellers off, so that's a good thing right there. And you'll notice that, even with, what was it, 47 propellers going, it is not draining fuel particularly fast. It's like 1 unit of fuel per second. That is because the engines are very good in this thing. It's well Tetris together. And, yeah, this is carburetor turbocharger engines. So, very fuel efficient, and it's stuck together in such a way that it is actually quite powerful. You'll notice, like down at the bottom, it has 5,100 power, which is a lot. This thing has a lot of juice in it. And this engine isn't actually that big either, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's 5 meters tall, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 meters wide. How long is it? It is 1, 2, what was that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 5 by 5 by 7. That's not big for a meaty engine like that. So, very nice engine. I believe Rawel told me he got this from somewhere. I can't quite remember off the top of my head where. But whoever it was someone who is a bit of an engine mechanic, just in their spare time. So, very good engine. Okay, so there's a lot of good things to say about this craft. And, of course, now we've got to get to the things that are not so good. And we've already mentioned just the little ammo error right there. And just with the Flakgun, just replace the head of that. That's a tiny little mistake, won't hold it against anybody. Speaking of okay, I did not mean to turn the thing yellow. Right, speaking of ammunition, there are places to put your ammunition, and there's multiple ways to like stick your ammo storage, and where you put your ammo storage is very important, because the way aimpoint selection works in this game, it prioritizes ammunition barrels and ammunition storage above virtually anything else. It goes ammunition and AI mainframes and then everything else. So wherever you stick your ammo barrels is where the enemy is going to be aiming first. And here's one of the kind of things that's questionable about this, because these, you'll notice, 1, 2, 3, 4, that the ammunition in the Lancer is actually in quite dangerous places. These ammo barrels are right next to a missile system, and missile systems are not cheap. Like a launch, it's right next to 40 materials each launch pads, and yeah, it's like what else is down here? It's mostly just the missiles at risk right there, and over here, this one is slightly better protected. It's surrounded by metal. But the problem is that both the ammo storages are quite central to the craft, lengthwise. This one is right at the center of mass. And that is an issue because, generally speaking, you want to put the ammunition of a craft in a place which is hard to hit, and also doesn't put the other parts of your craft at risk. So ideally, if you look at things like, one of the ways I do it, and I do this in a lot of my ships, is I put the ammunition well below the waterline, which means that enemy ships tend to shoot down into the water, and it means a lot of shots miss completely, and also means that kinetic shells and fragmentation, their damage is reduced just a little bit. This is not like that. This is right at the waterline, and it's like, if you look here, top ammo barrel is just above it. And because it's at the center of mass, this is the part of the ship that moves around the least. Like, as it turns, this stays in roughly the same space, stays in roughly the same line, so it's by far the easiest part of the ship to hit with cannon fire. And this part of the ship is not a lot better. It's closer to the rear, which is a lot better. Like, right at the rear is the part you want to place ammo preferably, because it means that any shots which try to lead the target are way more likely to miss. This is a little bit further forward, so anything aiming here is perhaps likely to miss, but again, this is a fat, solid part of the ship, and I do tend to notice in the testing I've done for this that it's a good thing. Oh yeah, I haven't even commented on the shields. This thing is also quite well shielded, I think it has shields. Where's the shield? Yeah, it has shields. It has... What? This is... Okay, at the moment, these aren't set to anything, but I believe these shields overlap with other shields, I think. Can't really tell, maybe not. Maybe it just has rudimentary shields. But it is a good thing this thing is reasonably tough for its size, because this thing eats a lot of bullets. like, when you throw this against... what is going on here? Yeah, PID system is correcting itself. When you throw this against craft that fire a lot of Daka, you will see that this thing gets hit a lot. It's not particularly good at dodging shots, and that's because of these ammo barrels being, like, in a very central place. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing, because if you centralize your ammunition stores, it means you can put your thickest armor around it and also heavily shield it. It's not stuck on the extremities of the ship. But with a ship this small, and also this cheap, you want to dodge whatever you can as well. Which means that this craft is a little bit vulnerable to crams. Like, not super vulnerable, but more vulnerable than it would otherwise be if it just had all its ammunition in its butt. Okay, that was a very long-winded way of saying, like, this thing is not very dodgy, just because of the way the ammo's set up. Right, and I've already mentioned that the LAMS is optimized for missile swarms rather than dealing with, like, big shells. That is entirely preference. You can't really... It will be very difficult to, like, make a craft like this more... It'll be very difficult to retrofit this to make the LAM more suitable for cannon fire, because, well, it's not really big enough, and I believe people have told me, I think Rawel himself told me, that LAM systems focused on, like, cannon defense need a lot more pumps, a lot more laser pumps, because they just generally eat a lot more power. So that's not a huge criticism, but it does mean that, like... I don't know, it just means that this thing, you want to be careful about sending it up against craft which, like, really lay on the cram fire. Or, like, even worse, the heavy APS fire, because, like, as we all know, like, advanced cannons are very, very dangerous against anything which doesn't have very good shielding. Okay, so... I didn't mention before, one of the great things about this craft is that it's quite compact. Why did I do that? I didn't mean to do that. I just wanted to do this. Like, there's a lot of stuff really close together. Like, hell, it even has ammunition right here. That's both a strength and a weakness, because it means the thing isn't any bigger than it needs to be, but it also means that this thing actually can't really take that many hits, because wherever you run down the entire length of this craft, and you can just see, like, okay, mainframe, an important thing. The way you sit, argue important thing. Material storage, that's important thing. Lots of AI components, important thing. Missiles, ammunition processors, main gun, lots of metal, ammo storage, little gap right there, engine, and fuel, and batteries, and the LAM system itself. And over here, then you have missiles, and you have ammunition, and you have more laser components, and you have a main gun, and you have torpedoes, and you have another mainframe. So essentially, the problem with building compact is that pretty much every inch of your craft is crammed with something important that you don't necessarily want to lose. Like, that is a building style that can work very well, but I find that there is a tipping point. Like, this craft and other compact craft like it tend to either do extremely well, but the split second the force tipping point happens with the kind of enemy you're facing, like, say you face an enemy that's just that little bit strong enough that it can get through the defenses of this craft, it tends to suffer quite badly. And, like, admittedly, it's not entirely fair test. I threw this against the Orochi and the Skilla, and remember, like, the Skilla is twice the cost of this. The Orochi isn't much better, but, like, this thing does suffer against larger ships, which is to be expected, honestly. It'd be a little bit amazing if it didn't, but even against, like, things like the Goanna, it does beat the Goanna eventually, but perhaps not as effectively as it could be, because the Goanna does tend to blow vital chunks of it off, and it tends to be just a long-running battle until the Goanna runs out of money because it's a repair hog. Story of my craft. So yeah, and onto the weaponry, you will notice that the weapons systems for this thing, inertial fuse, frag, HE warhead, squash head, all that stuff. This is a formidable shell. If it hits a... Oh, hello, I have needles for you all. If this thing hits a unshielded part of a craft, it is going to do serious damage. But if it hits a point where shields overlap, it does a lot less. It's not ammo efficient in that way against well-shielded craft, which again isn't a huge issue because this is a starter craft, and the Onyx Watch and the Deepwater Guard don't have many craft which are very well shielded. The Paddle Gunner and the Kraken, I think, are the only ones which really have that kind of butterfly shielding thing. And even then, this thing does alright. But if you want to play with this, bear in mind that the main gun is not a shield buster. That is not what it's meant for. And if you wanted to make it a shield buster, you essentially just go here and you mess with the slider just to get a little bit of a bigger blast radius. So if we go 465, you'll see expected blast radius 30 meters. I think to get maximum explosive damage at the very edge of the radius, it needs to be twice that, so about 21 meters. So if we slide this that way, slide this that way, we don't quite get to 21, but you do get a lot more explosive damage, which means if it hits a shield and the shield is only, say, 10 or 11 meters away from the hull, it can still do damage, as opposed to if the shell has the slider all the way up here, in which case it does about half that explosive damage, as it doesn't tickle things through shields quite as well. But again, that is a weapon preference. This is a more specialized gun, as opposed to HE being multi-purpose. And I was originally going to say this thing is a bit of a power hog, but remembering these little propellers only cost 5 power each, and I keep calling this thing, the Lancer, has quite an efficient engine, so that isn't a real problem. So that about sums it up. I feel I talked way more about this than I thought I would. In summary, this is a very good little craft. I would recommend it just to either play with it or to like kind of dissect it. Oh, I completely forgot to mention it has collision avoidance on the front. I have stuck this on the front of my craft, or at least 3 of my craft, and I'm not sure if the way I've done it is work. I've basically prefabbed these 2 blocks right here and stuck them on the front. They don't seem to do much, so I don't know what I've done differently. It's not too much of a big deal. I can figure that out later. But yeah, I think highly enough of this craft that I'm going to use it in the campaign. In fact, next episode I plan to sport it in, just for a bit of flavor, just for a bit of variety, and because while this thing can't handle a completely crazy cram barrage, it can pop a reasonable amount of cram shells out of the air before any of them get through. Which is what you want when fighting the Onyx Watch, honestly. So, just to leave you off, I'm going to, yeah, let's throw a regular Onyx Watch ship at it, like. Now, let's throw a bay leaf at it. Bay leaves are fun. They're fun to blow up, and because they have no shields, it's just a real hoot. And I can't help but notice that it's 3,000 meters away. We're just, I guess we'll just, watch this thing sail off into the sunset. How fast is this again? Yeah, lending to the point that this craft isn't particularly dodgy. It's not super fast. It goes a reasonable pace, about almost 18 meters per second. But yeah, not incredibly fast, which absolutely means that this is going to take too long. So instead, I'm going to throw a crap ton of flying squirrels at it. So planes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Where you go, lads. Okay, so the squirrels should get here eventually. And there's that Hesh gun going. One of the squirrels just dived nose first into the water. Wow, did it actually hit it? That's actually amazing. I mean, basically, this is just a chance to show off the LAM system as I do my outro. So, and also the little missiles. The missiles are good. And watch it. Boom, 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 boom. Cool. So yeah, thank you all so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, and I will see you next time in From the Depths. Die, squirrels, die! Farewell!